Maybe you're carrying on from the previous lesson, or maybe you've just walked into the room, just logged on, and you're starting your second lesson. If that's the case, then obviously what you see on the screen now won't be there. So what I'm going to do is close this down and imagine that we're just starting a new lesson, and going through the startup will also help you. So remember, we need to go to the start. We need to type idle into the search. Now if you're on Windows 10 or anything else like that, you will have the Windows magnifying glass. You just need to click on that to get the search and type idle, and we can get the GUI going. Remember, the first thing that shows up is the shell. We don't want to program in the shell, not yet anyway. The shell is useful, but we don't need it. But let's say we want to get back the program that we were doing last time. If you choose File and Open, it takes you straight to this one. Remember, this one is the bad place to go. We do not want you to save your work in this Python 27 folder at all. And if you can remember from the last time, we went to Documents, and I created a folder called My Python Files. Yours may just be in here, in which case you just need to scroll down and find this icon with the name. If you hover over it, it will tell you it's a Python file. There, we can see there, it's a Python file. But my files were in my Python folder, so I'm going in there, and there is my first program. Okay. So if I click on Open, I can get back the work that I did in the last lesson. So click on my first program, click Open, and there is the work that I did in the last lesson. Notice that this print has turned purple. That's okay, don't worry about it. From time to time, just the print statements, for some unknown reason, just tend to go purple instead of orange. It's nothing to worry about. You haven't made a mistake. But that will occur. So there we go. There's the program that I wrote in the last lesson, and if I press F5, it will happily run it and show me the results in the shell. Remember, I can close the shell down. It doesn't really matter. So this is my second lesson, and really I want to keep this. I don't want to change anything. I might want to add to it later, but I've got a new lesson today. So what I'm going to do is choose File and New File. And now I've got two of these windows up. Notice this doesn't say shell either, it says untitled. And I'm going to call this one my second program. So if I go to File and Save, or Save As, because we opened our file from the Python folder, and notice I've got two here, I might want to think about why I've got two my first programs. If you remember, we saved one without the .py extension. So I've got two. So I'm looking at all the files in my folder, not just the Python files. Okay, so in just Python files, I've got my first program. I want to save this, and I want to give it a name. This is going to be my second program. Remember, we need to put .py on the end if we wish to retain our colours. It will work if you don't put .py on the end. It will work fine. It's just when you've made mistakes, it might be difficult to find them. So I'm going to click Save now. That's good. If you had started your program up, or Python hadn't gone to that folder to get this my first program, you would have been in that Python 27 folder. You need to come into your documents and save it elsewhere. So here's my second program. I could keep this open, it really doesn't matter, but for this tutorial I'm going to close it. So here's my second program. Now remember, in the last one we looked at a print statement, and between two speech marks we put some text on the screen. So we chose to do hello, and I think we had hello world. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to look at sort of joining text together. So this is what I really want to happen. It's a print hello Bob. Notice the asterisk saying it's not been saved, so I'm going to press F5, click OK, my shell pops up and hello Bob comes up too. So that's good. That's what we did in the last lesson, but I want to change it a little bit and introduce a new term to you. So what I can do, let me just go back to hello. I can have a hello, and I can use a plus sign, and then I can put Bob as a second word. So they are enclosed with speech marks, the hello, and the Bob is also enclosed by speech marks. And I've put a plus symbol between them. That doesn't mean add as in maths. This means join these two together. So to print hello Bob, I could have done hello Bob in all between those two speech marks, or I could have joined them together. Now you might think that's a bit silly. Why would you do that? But we're going to come to that in a minute, and this is very, very useful. So that is something that we need to remember and look out for. So there we go, hello Bob. I'm going to press F5 to run my program, and tell me what you notice. Okay, so we've got hello Bob, but there is no space between the hello and the Bob. And actually, there shouldn't be, because we didn't tell it to put a space. And now we've got hello. It's going to print everything in there, and it's going to print everything in there, and it's going to join them together with no space. If I wanted a space, I either put the space at the end of hello. That will work. Let's have a look at that. Hello space Bob. Or I can put the space before the B in Bob and save my work. Run it again, and I get the same thing, hello Bob. So it didn't matter where I put the space, as long as it was between the quote marks. If I'd have put the space after the quote marks, maybe before or even after the plus symbol, what do you think is going to happen? So I'm going to run my program, click OK, prints hello Bob with no space. So the space has to be inside the green area. We call these strings. That's the technical term for them, strings. So it has to be in the string. It doesn't matter how many spaces I've got between. It's not going to make a blind bit of difference. Clicking OK, hello Bob, works again. Notice because I didn't close my shell down, it just keeps printing after. So you can either close it down, which is useful when you want to see it from scratch, because this tends to get a bit clogged up with code that you've done before or error messages, and it can be slightly confusing. So I close it down to begin with, but maybe you want to leave it open to see the results of previous versions. So there we go. We need to put the space in between the hello and the Bob. But as I mentioned earlier, we didn't really need to do that. All we needed was to put hello Bob all in one string, and that would have been fine. So I've chosen to do this for a reason. And instead of saying hello Bob, I want to sort of get a name from somebody and just print their name out. So instead of Bob, I want to print out somebody's name. And actually that's exactly what I want to do, is have the word hello plus and then name. Not in quotes, not green, it'll stay black, because this is called a variable, and a variable means something that can change. And at the moment, name hasn't got anything. So if I ran my program, I would actually get an error, and a different kind of error to what you've seen before. So let's run it so that we can see that error. And there we go. We got nothing printed out, and we've got lots of red lines which look really, really confusing. So I'm going to try and explain a little bit about this, but this is what you'll see most of the times when you make an error. You'll see red lines written in the shell. So it says name error, name is not defined. In English that just means name didn't contain anything, like Bob. And I'm going to talk a little bit about variables in a minute. We try to read these error messages from the bottom going up. So there's the first place that I'm looking. That's telling me what kind of error I've made. At the moment it's nonsense, it's meaningless, but the more you play with Python, the more these will become meaningful. The one above will tell you roughly where in your code it thought the error was. and it's always going to think where the error was and not give you the actual error, because it can never be sure. So it's saying it occurred somewhere in this print hello plus name, and there's our code at the very top. So that's what it is. In the next line above, it's trying to tell me where it thought it occurred. So it's telling me, now if I just stretch this, that is actually all one line. I know it went on two. It's telling me it was in the file, because it could come from any file, and it's telling me where the file was located, and then it's trying to tell me on what line the error occurred. And if you remember, in the last lesson we looked at these two things down here, line and column. So it's telling me it was on line 1. This is line 7 of the shell. So if I click back on here, it's telling me that it was line 1, but it can't tell me what the column is, and we will just ignore in module at the moment. So that is how to read the error message. So name is not defined. What does it mean? Well, a variable, let's close this down. If you can imagine, a variable is a cup. Okay, what can you put in a cup? You can put water in a cup, you can put tea in a cup, you can put coffee in a cup, you can put anything in a cup. Now imagine that cup has got some writing on the front of it, and the writing for my cup is name, or even drink. Let's go with drink. Yeah. And when I put something in there, because at the moment the cup is empty, it's got nothing in. If I put the drink is water, then I know I've got water in my cup. If I put tea in my cup, then I know I've got tea in there. Actually, that's a really good thing to do, is instead of call it drink, call it cup. Got tea in my cup, or I've got water in my cup, or I've got milk in my cup. It's variable. Cup stays the same. It's the name on the front of the cup, and the item after the equal sign is what goes into it. So in this case it's milk. It was tea, could have been coffee, could have been anything. So this is a variable. Variables are black in Python and need a value. So that was what the mistake was. It said I've got a cup called name with name written on the front of it, but I hadn't put anything in it. So if I press enter before the P to get a new line at the top, I can say name, that's my cup, and inside that cup I can put the word Bob. So I've just put Bob in the cup. Now I'm saying print hello plus whatever is in the cup, not the cup itself, whatever is in the cup. So if I save that, click OK, there we go. It works. Hello Bob. I didn't get an error message. Remember, we haven't got a space. We could choose to put the space in front of B, which I wouldn't, or after the hello, which seems more sensible. So if I now run my program, it should work nicely. Name equals hello Bob. So that's called a variable, and that's why we can use the plus symbol. In other words, we're not joining two strings together, we're joining a string and a variable which is a string. So let's do another one of those without sort of changing the emphasis of what we're doing. Let's have another variable. Let's say Bob plays sport, and we want to find out what his sport is. So I can say sport equals cricket, and now I can start writing sentences. So here I put print hello plus name, and now I can also print out some messages using these variables, name and sport. So print, let's go for hello, don't forget the space, plus name, so it's hello Bob, and I'm going to join that to I like space. In fact, it might be useful to put a space in front of there. I'll leave it for the time being and you'll see what I mean. I like plus, join it to the sport, and just finishing off my sentence 2. So I've made a sentence, but I've used sort of variables that can change. So I've put hello plus a variable plus I like plus sport plus 2. So let's see what happens when I save and run my program, and then we're going to change the variables, see what happens. And click OK to save. Hello Bob, I like cricket too. Notice what I said earlier on that I there, I needed a space. So that looks quite nice, but if I just put the space in there, it's going to look nicer. Hello Bob, I like cricket too. So how are we going to change this? How am I going to say things like Susan and netball? Well, if I go up to here and change Bob to Susan and sport to netball, notice I didn't have to change this line at all. Okay, and when I run my program now, it says hello Susan, I like netball too. So that's great. We're now getting sentences out that we actually didn't write Susan in there, and we didn't write netball, or we didn't write Bob, or we didn't write cricket. We used variables. So we're going to extend this a little bit so that we can get some information from the person who is typing at the keyboard. Remember, we are now creating programs. We're not just using the computer, so we're creating something for somebody else to use. So let's go for that. So first of all, instead of saying name equals Susan, what I'm going to do is I am going to ask the person who is sitting at the keyboard to type something in. And the way I can do that is type raw underscore input. Now that is input, not input, I-N-P-U-T. And I'm going to open and close some brackets. Now that says, in computer terms, wait until the user types something and presses enter on the keyboard. And whatever they type, put into the word name, into the variable name, sorry. So let me run that program and let's see it working. Click OK. There it is, it's working, it's waiting. There's a small problem. I might not think it's working at all because it's just sitting there doing nothing. But if I type Fred and press enter, it says hello Fred, I like netball too. But it waited. I hadn't got a clue that it was actually waiting for me. So really I need to give it a message to say do something, so I understand what it's waiting for. And I can do that inside these two brackets. If I put a string inside there and give the user a hint, please enter your name, colon. It doesn't really matter what you put in here. You could put ZZZZZ if you want. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you put inside those speech marks are going to be printed on the screen. So now that I've put a message in there, if I run my program again, it says please enter your name nicely. Notice I put a space at the end to give me a little bit of a space between that colon and where it's flashing, so I can type my name. This time it's Fred, and hello Fred, I like netball too. So that's working. Now let's think about this. Let's go over this one again. Let's imagine that we want to get what their favourite sport is. At the moment, sport is netball. I'm going to change that. I'm going to get the value from the keyboard, so that means raw underscore input, open and close my brackets, and inside there write a string which is going to ask a question. So what is your favourite sport? Question mark. Now we didn't use a question mark in that one because it was an instruction, please enter your name, but this is a question, so let's use a question mark and a space at the end so that we've got a space between our question and our writing. So if I save that and run it, Click OK. Please enter your name. Notice the program is stopping and waiting for us to type something in. That's what raw input is doing. It's telling the computer to wait until they type something. I'm going to type Andy Murray. Now it's not doing anything. Even though I've typed Andy Murray, it's waiting for me to press enter to do something. So I press enter. It says, hello Andy Murray, what is your favourite sport? I'll give you a guess. It's tennis. Again, it's waiting until I press enter, because we're on this line here. Sport equals raw input. Raw input says wait until they type something and then press enter. Hello Andy Murray, I like tennis too. Job done. So that's good. So what I would like you to do a little bit later on is to invent some of your own questions and think about the variables and how you're going to name the variables. Maybe music, raw input, what is your favourite music, and then invent some form of sentence which prints out a meaningful message to the user. But before then, I just want to go through a couple of errors that you may make. So remember, before I stressed it was raw input, not raw input. Let's see what happens if we put raw input. We can see immediately that that is black and that is purple. So that should be purple as well. So we can see from the colours that we've made a mistake. And if I run that program, I'm going to get a mistake, an error. I'm going to get a big red message. Name error. Raw input isn't defined. And it's telling me where it is and on what line it is. So notice this was on line 1. Let's say that I typed line 1 correctly and I hadn't typed that one correctly. Got that one as raw input. If I press F5 and click OK, it should say line 3 this time. Oh, actually it hasn't. So now this is important because I expected an error and an error never occurred. The thing is that Python will work through all the lines that are correct until it reaches an error. So let's go back to the program and let's type Fred. Now it's reached the error and now it's telling us what the error is. So it's saying raw input with an M on line 3. So we know that's where the error was. So that's one thing to look out for, is spelling mistakes that you make. Another thing is missing out these plus symbols. If you miss out a plus symbol in joining, so whatever you're joining, you have to have a plus symbol to join it, and if you join it to something else, you need another plus symbol, and so on. Notice I haven't got one at the end of 2 because I'm not joining anything onto the end of there. So I've taken the plus symbol out of that so that I'm not joining anything. Let's go through it again. Remember, it's not going to give me my error until I reach line 4 in my program. It's going to do that line, then it's going to do that line, then it's going to do that line, and it's going to go crash. So let's run that. Click OK. It doesn't. It tells me I've made a typing mistake. Invalid syntax, if you remember. So it's actually read through my program and realized I've made a typing mistake. So when I click OK, it's highlighting where it thinks I've made the typing mistake. Now you might be under the illusion that name is incorrect, but if you remember, all it was the plus symbol. So it tries to give you where the error has occurred and highlights in red where the error has occurred, not what the error is. So please be careful. Try to look and try to see what you've done wrong before running it. So this time when I press OK, I've corrected it, so I can now type Fred and F1. I like F1 too. So that's a couple of errors. Don't forget we need the quote marks even inside here. So if I don't put the quote marks in, you can see straight away that we've got black, orange, black. It should be green. Okay, it's a question. So we can see straight away that there's a mistake, but let's imagine that we haven't seen it. Try to run the program. Again, it tells us there's a typing mistake. Click OK, and it highlights at favourite sport. We know what it was. It was the speech mark there. So the error isn't exactly where you made it. So again, read carefully. If we miss something out, so I'm not going to do name. I delete that, run my program. It's going to say, oh, you made a typing mistake. Again, it's highlighting the whole thing. It says your typing mistake is here. So we put name in. Now, that's fine. Okay. So they were errors. Let's just finish this off. Fred and F1. They were errors that could be spotted immediately. But what happens if I make a strange error? In fact, if I say hello sport, I like name too. So although this is wrong, so let's see what happens. Okay, let's type Andy Murray again and press enter. Hello Andy Murray, what is your favourite sport? Tennis. And my program says hello tennis, I like Andy Murray too. Although that is wrong, because that should be his first name and that should be tennis, although that is wrong, it worked. It didn't give us any error. It didn't come up with error. It worked its way through. That is called a logical error. In other words, we made a mistake in the way we have done things. They're quite difficult to find and put right. So be careful. You need to check your program one line at a time and see where you've gone wrong. Notice it didn't tell us we got an error. We had to sort of deduce that from the answer we were given in the shell. So your turn, as I said before. See if you can find some more questions. You can use anything for a variable name, so music. Try to make it sensible. Music and what is your favourite sport isn't sensible. Try not to use things like ZZZZ, A. That it will work. It's fine. Let's just prove that. I'm going to save it. It's not going to. Well, it will crash because I don't have a variable here for sport, so it's going to complain there. But that variable is fine. C. There we go. Sport is not defined, but if I copied that and replace sport with my new variable, it will be fine. It will accept it. It will be happy. Please enter your name, Fred. Fred, and let's say chicken for my favourite sport. That's nonsense. Hello chicken, I like Fred too. So it's up to you. Have a go, get some information from a user and print something out on the screen. In the next lesson we're going to try to work out what happens when a user types something in and what we can do with it.